Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 1994 live-action Street Fighter film, adapted from the game franchise of the same name. And yes, I am talking about the movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. And the film begins by telling us that the Southeast Asian nation of Shadaloo is racked by a civil war occurring between the forces of a former drug lord turned would-be dictator, General M. Bison, and the Allied nations, whose forces are led by Colonel William F. Guile. Um, Apparently, the person who wrote this film isn't entirely clear on what a civil war is. So, I guess maybe they make the argument that the Korean War was a civil war, but we never see like a Shadaloo government that is not the Allied nations. In any case, Bison has taken 63 Allied nation relief workers as hostages and demands 20 billion US dollars for their release. Guile has no intention of paying this, of course, instead vowing to track down Bison and bring him to trial for his crimes. Meanwhile, American con artists and martial artists Ryu Hoshi and Ken Masters attempt to swindle arms dealer Victor Sagat by selling him fake weaponry. However, Sagat sees through the ruse and things look bad for the American duo until Guile and his forces burst in and arrest everybody. They all get carted off to prison, where Guile witnesses Ryu and Ken fighting Sagat's men, and he recruits the pair to help him find Bison in exchange for their freedom. It seems Sagat is a weapons dealer for Bison, so Ken and Ryu are given a homing device and an opportunity to win Sagat's trust by staging a prison escape. The plan is that Sagat will then take them to Bison's lair, giving Guile the information he needs to bring the warlord down. However, there's an unexpected third faction at work in Shadaloo. News reporter Chun-Li Zhang and her crew are also after Bison for the crimes he has committed, and their attempt to assassinate the warlord might well get Ken and Ryu killed in the process. Can the good guys manage to stop getting in each other's way long enough to triumph, or will Bison's mad dreams of world conquest come to pass? So Capcom, the makers of the Street Fighter video games, financed almost all of this film's $35 million budget, which gave them control over almost every aspect of the production. That control included demanding a Christmas 1994 release window, which led to a very aggressive production schedule. Writer-director Steven D'Souza apparently drafted the script in a single night, and trust me, it shows. Critical response to the film was savage. Leonard Maltin gave the film his lowest rating, while the Washington Post said the film was notable only for being the last film made by Raul Julia, an actor far too skilled for this picture, but far too professional to give anything less than his best. Even in 2009, a full 15 years later, the film was included on Time magazine's list of the 10 worst video games ever made, and it probably still deserves to be there. Many fans of the games also disliked the film, feeling it was too campy and unfaithful to the source material. The only people who were pleased, in fact, seemed to be Capcom. The movie made a comfortable profit at theatres, and according to Capcom's shareholder meeting last year, it is still bringing in tens of millions of yen every year, which, admittedly, only translates to hundreds of thousands of dollars, peanuts for a company worth about 13 billion, but not bad for 30 years after the movie came out. So I saw Street Fighters at theatres when it first came out. And as somebody who had never really played the games, I found it a delightfully silly, cheesy romp. And I still do, in fact. But that in no way should be taken to mean that I think this is a good film. It really, really isn't. In fact, it does almost everything wrong. So let's talk about some of its big missteps. So fighting games are not generally known for their deep and detailed storylines. Street Fighter II, for instance, which served, however tenuously, as the inspiration for this film, basically borrows its plot from Enter the Dragon. Evil Mastermind holds martial arts tournament to recruit/brainwash the world's best fighters into his service. Players progress through the game by beating each of the other 7 competitors before facing off against the Mastermind's minions and ultimately the Mastermind himself, General M. Bison. Of course, a film ideally needs more of a plot than just a series of one-on-one fights. Various fighting game adaptations have all tackled this in different ways. The first Mortal Kombat film amped up the dark supernatural menace. The DOA film added magic sunglasses, and of course a beach volleyball scene. Street Fighter, meanwhile, apparently decided to go ersatz G.I. Joe. It's not an inspiration the writer acknowledges. He instead cites being inspired by Star Wars and James Bond, and I'm willing to accept that it's possibly not something that he intended. but it's hard to see this film's version of M. Bison as anything other than a Cobra Commander XP. His troops even have similarly styled uniforms, albeit in red rather than blue, and he's facing off against an eclectic multinational group of operatives of unusual ability. Now, I have no in-principle objection to G.I. Joe films, though I don't think the ones that we've actually got were particularly good, but I do feel that if you're going to make a movie based on a martial arts fighting game franchise, you should maybe focus more on martial arts fighting and less on sloppily constructed geopolitics. The film's next mistake is that it tries to include too many characters doing too many things. It has no less than 15 named Street Fighter II characters, and it tries hard to give most of them their own little bit. Blanka gets an origin story, Dhalsim gets to be a conflicted scientist, Chun-Li is on a mission of revenge, Zangief is very stupid, Ken and Ryu have their whole conmen who eventually realise they want to do good hero's journey to get through, Guile suffered a personal tragedy that he's sometimes very upset about and sometimes seems to completely forget. It's just too many people with too many things going on. And I know that the Street Fighter games have a large cast, adding new fighters with cool visuals and powers is a key appeal of the game's expansions. But did the script really need to try and wedge every single one of them into the movie? It clearly can't do them all a similar amount of justice, and in fact, this is at its core a 5-character film. Bison, Guile, Chun-Li, Ryu, and Ken, with everyone else being more or less just hangers-on or henchmen. I think it would have been smarter to focus on this core 5 more tightly, perhaps playing a longer game with the Ken and Ryu are amoral hucksters angle to create a sense of jeopardy. Now you've got a film with Bison as a maniacal bad guy, Guile and Chun-Li as rival operatives sent to take him down, who fight and or flirt whenever they cross each other's paths, and Ken and Ryu as the wildcards who can ultimately tilt the balance. As an added bonus, there'd be more time in such a script for one-on-one and one versus many martial arts fights, rather than what this film actually offers, which is generally just hordes of nameless goons shooting at each other. Of course, if you did focus in on that like that, you'd want to get your casting right, and on that front, I have more bad news. Because the film not only picks what is arguably the wrong character to be its lead, Ken, Ryu, and Chun-Li seem to have been far more popular with players of the game than Guile ever was, but then wasted a huge amount of money on putting the wrong man in that role. You see, it seems that Capcom's leadership had long envisaged Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile and wanted him cast in the film. Since they financed the movie, they got their way, but hiring the muscles from Brussels took nearly $8 million of the film's $35 million budget, i.e. more than 20% of the total available. Now, it's true that in 1994, Van Damme was a bankable star off the back of 2 successful science fiction action hits, Universal Soldier and Time Cop. But the first thing is, those roles required little more than that Van Damme be handsome, athletic and stoic, whereas Street Fighter's lighter tone and campy story required him to deliver zingy one-liners, and also an inspiring speech. His ability to do either of these films was suspect at the best of the times. Which brings me to the second thing, which was this was far from the best of times. From 1993 to 1996, Van Damme was in the grip of a heavy cocaine addiction. That his performance is stiff and awkward in these circumstances is really no surprise. Ironically, the film's cast actually does include at least 2 people who could have been worthy leads. Ming-Na Wen, who plays Chun-Li, and Byron Mann, who plays Ryu. So yeah, Street Fighter is a silly, barely coherent, overstuffed mess of a movie with sloppy writing and wonky casting. But I always have fun when I watch it, and maybe you will too. And if you do enjoy it, then I have great news. This isn't even the most gloriously so bad it's amazing video game adaptation that 1994 has to offer. That honour, crown, ignominy instead goes to Double Dragon, and that's a movie that I shall delight in telling you about in my next video. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've seen Street Fighter, let me know what you thought of it.